the home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
Views.
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
Sports.
What's he say? It's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
And music to inspire you every day. This is Vuga Online, your inspiration radio station.
Yeah, welcome to Vuga Online Radio, and it's always fascinating the kind of conversations that I get to have with leaders in general, but specifically with leaders on this continent. And today, South Africa assumed the G20 presidency in 2025, preceding the US in 2026. Now, as part of that conversation, there's a number of streams that are taking place around us. But we need to talk a little bit about first, what am I talking about? What is this G20 presidency? And then we'll start delving in. We have two stream leads that are part of this conversation, but with the Values 20 portion of the G20 work that is being done. So there's plenty. I think we had Dr. Mvusi here the other day talking about the sustainability stuff and all of that. So we don't know anything. And that's kind of like why we are here, right? Welcome, lady and gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here with my colleague, Alex.
Yeah, so it's going to be a conversation. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, so I have Dr. Dumisani Magadlela here, as well as I'll see Alex Mathole. So I will let you guys first introduce yourselves a little bit. Before we talk about the G20 and the V20 and all of that's 20s, who is in the room? Share a little bit with our listeners, watchers, viewers.
Okay, beautiful. Alex Mathole. I am a conduct risk and regulatory risk management specialist. I've been doing this for over 27 years. And really with a passion around how do we grow and develop organizations that are values-led, value-centered, where governance, risk, and compliance practices are really anchored on how do we drive the right outcomes. I founded the company called Justings Advisory, and I am, together with Dumi, a co-lead of the Values 20 Sustainable Development stream. Dumi heads up the Solidarity stream. And so the whole work around Values 20 really excites me in the sense that it really aligns with the work that I've been doing over the past 27 years and continue to do. I have a very deep passion for Africa. And I think values, entrenching values in what we do in the African continent is really important towards charting a better future for Africa and its peoples.
Fantastic. And a few things already that you're saying that I want to go into a little bit in this instance. Dumi?
Thank you. I think, Alex, before you get off stage on the intro, mention your recent celebration.
Thank you. I've been working on my PhD for quite a number of years, and I'm excited to have completed it, and I'm scheduled to graduate in September. So all of us are I'm certainly excited about that, arriving at that point.
Yeah. Congratulations. That is actually more than congratulations, because we know how much work actually goes into that. So it's Dr. Alex Mathole for your information. Congratulations.
Soon to be. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Dr. Mo. My name is Dumisani Magadlela, or Dumi. I am a people development practitioner. I've been in the human development space for over 30 years, and both in academia and in practice of people development. I call myself a academic, practitioner academic. And my background is behavioral science, really looking at human behavior and then focusing on leadership and organizations. And I've been an executive coach, leadership coach for many, many years, working for years now, 20 years or so with Dr. Moore. So I know him for Lord of many, many years. The incredible work that Dr. Moore does. We've had our paths crossed many years and they've never really separated on that. I work mainly with leaders around the world. And I work in multilateral agencies. I've worked in the United Nations. I work a lot with the African Union and work in transforming organizations, really building organizational cultures that enable people to co-create spaces where everyone can thrive. And I've been working with values, bringing values into the workspace and supporting people through building Ubuntu and Ubuntu intelligence, enabling people for us as humanity to see each other as fellow human beings. And this has been my life's work, really, and writing about it, researching about it, publishing books and articles about it. And more recently, working on a concept called Ubuntu intelligence, which is a value system, ways of living with others that enable us to express all our gifts that we bring to this world. That's been a big part of my work. So excited to be co-stream lead with my colleague Alex here and others that are on this advocacy work on values under the theme living values, but co-leading the part on solidarity, which we'll talk about today. So excited to be here. Thank you, Vuga Online, for having us.
I thank you, because it makes us feel like we are part of something very important in the world, right? So welcome. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about this G20, V20, living the values. Give us a bit of a context around this work. First of all, what is the G20 and what is then the V20 in the context of the G20? Any of you can go.
I mean, the G20 is obviously known to be a group of nation states, spanning a number of countries in Europe, in Asia, and obviously South Africa being the one African country on this powerful group of countries. And the G20 really is around policy formulation and coordination across all of these countries to support economic growth and a number of other economic and strategic drivers. With South Africa hosting the G20 this year, the themes obviously that have been chosen are equality, solidarity, and sustainable development under the official South African G20 themes. But part of the conversation as far back as 2020 has been around, if you look at the global sustainable development goals, which the G20 also speaks to around driving sustainable development, it is evident from the 2024 report from the United Nations that strategic sustainable development goals have been missed. The targets were globally, and each country would be at a certain place by 2030. But you look at rising global inequality, you look at the climate crisis, you look at environmental degradation, and you look even at the levels of poverty that are still there. And it says to us, there have been challenges across different dimensions to achieve the change that was required. So the conversation really has been around what have been the disablers, some of the thinking, what have been the disablers for nation states suddenly arriving at a certain stage. And one of those is around values. You see, values inform decisions. Values around what we prize, what we deem as important. They talk to our belief system, and the things that we believe, the things that we prize, the things that we believe are important inform our choices. And so it became very important to have this conversation around, in order for us to have strategic shift, it is therefore important to interrogate the type of values and the value system that's in place, because in some respects it's delivering undesirable outcomes. So therefore, the Values 20 initiative was born out of that thinking, that challenge, and introduced in 2020 during the presidency of Saudi Arabia. And in each country where the G20 has moved, we've had a Values 20 parallel movement, obviously engaging around the type of values that nation states should focus on, and what type of values should inform policy formulation. And so every year, the Values 20 produces a communique that's submitted to the G20 around those values that must be incorporated in policy formulation. But South Africa has been unique in the sense that this year we've come to the view that, the conversation around values should not be intellectual, nor should it be elitist. You cannot have, academics and all of professionals having this conversation around values, but it's important to have dialogue across all sectors of society around values, because it's a combination of all of those elements. So in South Africa, we then have put together this advocacy stream, which is around creating and raising consciousness around values. And over a 3-year journey, we also want to move to a point where we're saying, how do we get these values lived and embedded such that people experience them as living and impactful in their lives?
Yeah, and I like what you say, Alex. I think around the whole idea of because I think what I usually hear with when these kind of initiatives come to play, right? It almost feels like there's a nice PR around it, and everybody gets excited about it, but nothing seems to land. But what I'm hearing you say then is the whole idea then of values is really then around embedding the work. The reason that the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, didn't work is because they are not valued. People value something else in this instance, which possibly is also real work here that says, okay, we have SDGs, but what do people value in this instance? And I want to go back a little bit afterwards, because I want to come back to this conversation. Anything you want to add to this V20? What are you guys now wanting to do? What should we know?
Yeah. Maybe start before I get to that part around what we need to know as a country, as a people, as a region, as a part of the world.
Yeah.
Alex mentioned when it started 2020 in Saudi Arabia. What's very important is for us to understand that we are part of a global ecosystem, and the G20 comprises of these nation states that came together in 1999 and did this. There's 85% of global GDP impacted by this G20 movement, let's call it that. And bringing in values into that has the potential to impact the world in a major way if we can really succeed in doing this, the advocacy part that Alex is referring to. We're looking at 75% or more of international trade among these major economies in the world. And there are currently around 19 or 20 countries, including, I think, the AU and the EU and those blocks. But stand to be corrected on that. Very important to look at this, that these are major players in the global trade, global economic advancement and development. And all this is linked, of course, to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Inner Development Goals and others, bringing into the center of humanity as a whole. It's not just business, it's everything. And the uniqueness of the South African proposition is to say that we need to do things a little differently. We need to bring advocacy into the center of it. Hence, we're guided by the principles of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development, as our president said in launching this. So V20 South Africa promotes these values-based leadership of dignity, Ubuntu, ethical governance, ownership and agency, and equality. And the idea with that, Dr. Moy, the value proposition for South Africa's V20 is we want to lead and promote and advocate for and be agents of values-driven change in South Africa, in Africa, in the world at large. And our aim is to deepen awareness of values, and then in the theme living values in our society, in business, in governance, in government, through advocacy efforts, clarifying the understanding of values in public and how to live them. The 3-year span that Alex is talking to, this is beyond the summit itself coming up in October 2025, saying we can do more. Let's embed it, let's live it. This is what we are seeking to do, to continue the global V20 contribution beyond the G20 summit hosting or presidency, with evidence-based, human-centered solutions that address values-based global challenges.
Yeah, and I want to go there now. I think after this, but we need to take a little bit of a break. You are on Vuga Online Radio, and we are having a conversation with Dr. Dumi Magadlela as well as now Dr. Alex Mathole, because it's done, right?
No,
It's done. We're not waiting for the paper here.
Until it's conferred.
And we are talking about Values 20 in the context of the G20. And the theme, as you have heard, is living values, which is intended as both an aspiration and a call to action. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, so if this is what we have, and then Dumi now just spoke a little bit about this thing will go beyond just the summit. I want to talk a little bit now about what is it that's happening there. But for now, let's take a quick break, and we will be back on Online Radio.
The home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
Countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
views,
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
sports,
Motshwanetsi, it's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
and music to inspire you every day. This is Vuga Online, your inspiration radio station.
My people, welcome back to Vuga Online Radio. So I was invited to attend the V20 launch. Was it a launch where Prof. Bonamohale was speaking? I was quite inspired by his presentation there, and of course a lot of the conversations that were taking place in that context. What has been done? Okay, maybe let me ask it differently, because it's nice to talk about these values and all of that in this context. But what's happening that's practical that I would see as someone who lives in South Africa or even on this continent?
Practically, what is happening? I think when you look at how do we drive change, part of driving change, the first part of it is around that creating of awareness, that conscientizing people, and then from there on you build on to how then do you get to entrench and embed going forward. So the past few months we really have spent in building strategic partnerships, because I indicated earlier that values are not a conversation actually that is the domain of Values 20. We are actually a catalyst. We see ourselves as a catalyst that promotes and supports conversations that should be taking place in society, because values impact the entire system. So we've really focused a lot of time in developing strategic partnerships with organizations that we think will be able to give scale and amplify the conversations around values. And the nature of the partnerships that we have are with civil society. So for instance, with Constitution Hill, We the People, we have a partnership with Constitution Hill around, if you think about the constitutional values that are enshrined in the Constitution, how do we again re-energize conversations and communities and internalization around what it means, what the Constitution should mean for us as individuals. And actually linked to that conversation around the Constitution, you may be aware that, courts have been open for the review of the Constitution in South Africa. And we are working with the Stellenbosch University, particularly Professor Thuli Madonsela's office, And we have actually shared our insights in terms of how we believe the Constitution should reflect values, particularly when it comes to social justice. Because ultimately, a constitution that is successful is one that reflects the aspirations of its people. The constitution must serve the people. And so we are making representations into that process that Professor Madonsela is leading with the Stellenbosch University. We've also partnered with business schools, because we believe corporates and businesses play a very instrumental role in shaping societies. I mean, Dumi talked about the contribution to the economy, and at the moment, businesses are ubiquitous to how societies operate. Actually, it's intermingled. So we are having we've partnered with a number of business schools around how in corporate institutions, in businesses, we then go deeper in embedding these values. But we also think that we can be very negative. We can be inclined to become very negative around what is not working, and have concerns about the lack of value-based leadership, or you're not having ethical governance. So we've decided also to showcase good examples, because I think it becomes important to be able to understand that you can have values-led leadership or values-based leadership and be successful in businesses. So we have, for instance, with Gibbs, there's this initiative that we've already started where we profile iconic leaders who've led ethically and produced results to demonstrate that it can be done. And because I do think that for particularly in the African context, there's such negativity in terms of Africa, in terms of its ability to deliver, and have these leaders show here people who've done it, who've delivered. So we have that. And so there are multiple streams where we are really driving this change. We're trying to say, we have this communique that we're working on, which is really intended to shape development of policy. So I think this combination of things are some of the things that we've done over the while. I don't know, Dumi, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, very briefly, you covered it all in comprehensively. What we have here, VUGA listeners and Dr. Mo, is there are two major pieces. There's the V20 advocacy engagement that Alex spoke to, and then there's the V20 Global Summit coming up in October 2025. Within just to add briefly on this, as the South African community, what we're saying is we have people that have worked in values broadly, leadership, youth, development, municipalities, local government. We talk about the need for values in how we live and do business and conduct business. So we have values, we don't call ourselves experts, but advocates of values-driven leadership or ways of being, living values. So in partnership with industry, business schools, as Alex mentioned, and civil society, Nelson Mandela Foundation, for example, we are hosting multiple segments of national engagements, from dialogues to mini summits to engagement sessions to talk about, like we're doing now with VUGA Online Radio, to say we're focused on solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. These three areas, the idea is to actively engage the population, our citizens, and regional leaders and counterparts in business, in government, across humanity, really, and saying, what can we do to live the values that we aspire to live by, all of us? And this is the focus of it. It's an advocacy campaign that is based on that. Then there is a research part where we carry out research around understanding the nuances and details of this. And there'll be papers and publications that will emerge from that, informed by living values and research based on that. And then beyond the summit, also continuing that for the next 3 years or so.
Sounds fantastic. It sounds like a job from heaven, and I'm sure you guys are having so much fun. I can imagine some of the conversations that are happening in your committee meetings and stuff? Because I would imagine there's a lot of that, right? So everything we're hearing here, there's a lot of work that you as advocates are having together and then coming and sharing it in the public. I'm glad you mentioned research to me. And I think just connecting back, Alex, to what you were talking about in terms of the aspirations of what are the aspirations of the people in this instance, and then the Constitution should express the aspirations of the people. What I'm noticing, and you talked also about this negativity. I don't know if you were to ask me sitting here, what are the aspirations of South Africans? I don't know. One of the things I've noticed is that at some point in 1994, we got freedom, and then everything is supposed to be fantastic um, after that. So when we say the Constitution should represent the aspirations of the people, what are you guys funding as a reason? I know it's still early days, so this is a very tough question. But what are you guys finding as the aspiration of the South African people?
But before even, Dr. Mongezi, to talk to the aspirations of the people,
Yes.
what is emerging, certainly from part of the research,
Yes.
is that, there are different types of scenarios. In certainly societies, and when it comes to even sustainable development. You have a scenario where we continue to do things the way we are doing them. And what is evident is that you see, certainly in South Africa, in the African continent, that across a number of indicators, things are going to continue to trend downwards. You have a second scenario that we can continue doing what we are doing with moderate adjustments on an assess basis, leverage technology. But even those would not be enough in order to make sure that we have more inclusive societies, because this is what the aspiration of South Africans, and I believe Africans, but bringing to South Africa, the aspiration of South Africans is to have social justice. What is social justice? Social justice is about fairness, it's about equality, and it's about distributive justice. And the aspirations of our people is to have a better quality of life. And in that is that we want to be able to live lives of dignity. Dignity in our ability to access basic resources, education, healthcare, basic infrastructure, water that's needed to be able to live a better quality of life. The aspirations of South Africans is dignity expressed in that. The aspirations of South Africa are about equality. Equality means equal access to opportunities, equal access to markets, equal access to participate meaningfully in the economy of the country, equal access to be able to benefit and participate and have access to the resources that the country has bestowed to all its peoples. So those are the aspirations of our people, and the aspirations of our people are this for all of this, for all of the activities, mechanizations to be sustainable. Yeah. The aspirations of our people are not one generational, but the aspirations of our people are that we must leave no person behind. And so those, I think, are very important principles that we think that to chart the next scenario, which is a future scenario that we believe is more sustainable, it is important to get to these values that the Constitution aspires to, and to be able to create spaces where people can live meaningfully and feel that they have a better quality of life.
Yeah. Sounds. I like the whole idea because it kind of like summarizes very nicely, right? The dignity the equality piece there, because and I suppose my work on values has been quite fascinating in that while we may use those words, they look different in behavior for different people. So dignity for me is very different. I'm sitting right now in this studio, which is solar paneled and all of those things. I don't have to worry about load shedding or power. But on the other side, in Fosloras, I have my mother there who Eskom has increased the prices of electricity, and she now has to keep asking me, "Hi, ke kopa another 100 rand, ke kopa another 100 rand." And dignity is for her in that instance not to be asking for 100 rand. And just feel that. So I really get it. And I also understand now, and I want to maybe ask it as a question here. It's a bit controversial. This whole thing, when you talked about equality, immediately in my head, the word equity came, equitable instead of equal. Because I don't know, is it possible to have equal access to stuff?
I think that's a very important conversation, and because of my legal background, just perfectly. I think that equality is about, it's premised on seeing the intricate value of all humans. That all humans, we are created equal. And equality is about saying whether you're black, you're white, you're colored, or Indian, or any other race, we are created equal. And therefore, the principle of equality says no one group should have more access to resources above the other just by virtue of being, because our being is created equal. We are all seeing that humaneness that we all possess. So that's the concept of equality. Equity says, based on, equity is contextual. So equity then says, whilst we are created equal and we're equal, circumstances and context require that we deal with situations differently, not because of inherent intrinsic value of people, no, but because we need to be able to consider the context, the nature of the issues that we're dealing with. So in the South African context, therefore, you have to look at South Africa's history and say, yes, we are created equal, but our history necessitates that we confront the prejudice and injustices on the past, and that we have a mechanism to rebase. So I think that kind of is equality and equity is about rebasing.
Dr. Val, may I jump in there?
Go ahead.
This is very, very important. Thank you, Alex, for mentioning that. This is very important. So there is something in the preamble of the Constitution that says that, because the preamble says, we, the people, recognize injustices of our past and honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, and respect those who have worked to build and develop our country. This is very inclusive. It takes everyone who fought and everyone who was there building. So in other words, we honor everyone who is here. And then there's a line there, Dr. Moore, that says, improve the quality of life of all citizens and this is very important, free the potential of each person.
Yeah.
It says that in the preamble. Doing that means we recognize that the equality part that you're referring to talks to about that we need to co-create spaces to free the potential of each person.
Yes.
This is very important. How do we do that? We need to equal the really level the playing field, but also recognize the harm that's been done and the contribution that's been made, and say we are starting here, we're building going forward.
Yeah. You are on the on VU Online Radio. We are having conversations about the values, about the V20, about G20. But I think for me, what's beginning to make sense about why values are important is contextualizing this thing beyond just the individuals, right? because I think when we think about values, everybody is thinking about their own values. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, I want to take us to what's the call. So everybody, Vuga has like over 200,000 odd people listening across the world, right? So what is the call? But before we talk about the call, there's a few follow-up questions I want to have. And then, Alex, I want to talk a little bit about take you a few steps back to your introductions, because I actually have been listening and I'm very excited about this conversation. But for now, we need to take a little bit more of a break. And speaking of the power, my power is kind of dying in the studio. So I kind of need to shift my power, and then we'll be back after this.
How do you know the life of personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are? How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.
To this conversation about leadership and the values, as well as the G20. As you know, South Africa has this year taken over or assumed the leadership for the G20, and it has been fascinating to actually watch. I think for me, what was exciting to see, which talks a little bit about where we are as a country compared to, because I've been observing the growth of this country for the last 30 odd years, right? And when towards the end of 2024, this was announced, and then the president had already had a number of people set up. I think 2 weeks later, there was already a leadership team, and then, it looked like everything was like moving very fast. I'm like, ooh, this is the country I actually want to live in, where we make decisions and then things move very fast. And it sounds like with you guys, in terms of some of the work that you're doing, there's a lot of things that are happening. But this is big work. And Alex, when you started, you talked a little bit about your career and working in corporate and introducing this whole idea of values. And I think the three of us sitting here know this is very hard work to do it in corporate. So what gives you guys the gall to think you can do it in like a whole country?
The beauty with it, and which is something that really struck me when we started this movement in South Africa,
yes,
is that there is so much amazing work that's already taking place.
yes.
There are so many good organizations that are already focused on this conversation. They get it. There are leaders that get it. Yes. And so our view is that it's important to take an ecosystem-based view in shaping the conversation around values. Again, I go to the point that it cannot be values 20, as a movement that it runs parallel to the G20, that says we are the custodians of this. Far from it. I think that it's important to be able to give power, credence to organizations that are doing it, and then be able to connect the pieces. And that's the piece that we see ourselves as adding value, because all the different conversations in isolation remain fragmented. But when you pull them together coherently and cohesively, you then gain momentum. And so we believe that it is in our ability to connect networks, to foster cooperation, coordination, and collaborations across different sectors of society, that we can lift the conversation, but importantly also demand accountability. Whether it is accountability in terms of how businesses live the values, or whether it's the government itself or social actors. And I think that's particularly important. So coming back to businesses, I found that there are many businesses that are doing exceptionally well. If you look at some of the global parameters, they do say actually social confidence in businesses in some instances may be higher relative to some of the nation states. So businesses are an important strategic partner, but there are things that have gone wrong. There are things that have gone wrong when social expectations have not been met, when the outcomes are actually extractive as opposed to restorative and regenerative. So we are using the conversation around values to also lift a mirror, to have a mirror around those practices that we believe are corrosive and do not contribute to building a better society for South Africa and all its people.
Yeah. It feels like actually, from what you're talking about, Alex, there's more than just South Africa, right? Because if we latch it on to the real work of the G20 anyway, which is a global process, and then I'm going to be in so much trouble here. And then you look at what's happening, for example, in the US, where the president is throwing a tantrum. I don't want to be facilitated. I don't know if that then speaks to solidarity. I don't know if that speaks to recognizing people's dignity. And I don't know if that speaks to recognition of equality, if you can just impose tariffs all over the place without coordinating. But bear with me here. There is a question that has nothing to do with that. So but what I'm noticing then is that when this thing really works, I can see how a president of any country, not just South Africa, in Kenya or in Ghana or in Pakistan, they would be going, where does dignity look? What does dignity look like for my people? What does equality look like for my people? What does solidarity look like for my people? Am I getting it correct here? Because I'm just wanting to make sure.
Yeah, if I may jump in there, Alex, before you come in, I love your strong legal part of it, or lens on it. But I wanted to bring in something you may touch on it, Alex, to reflect on the King 4 code in doing business. Alex mentioned that in South Africa we have so much great work happening, and many people don't realize that what Mervyn King has done over the years has set a precedent for global best practice around corporate governance. It's a leading piece of work that many people model around the world at seeing it as a beacon of what we need to do to just principles and governance around how to do business and how to govern that environment. So the point I'm making on that is that when we lay down policies and principles and laws, we are protecting everyone's dignity and integrity and ability to express themselves, to be who they are within these parameters. Yes. And if you look at the King Code, the King 4 especially code, it provides a framework for how we can do stuff that will support everyone who has gifts, talents, or expertise to do something within the corporate frame to succeed. Yeah. So it's something to look at and understanding, Dr. Moore and VUCA Online listeners. We are in space now that is fast-paced change with technology. We need some governance parameters. We need ethical foundations for us to not restrict anyone, but to at least have some kind of shared ways in which we say, this is how we do things. This is not the wild, wild west. We are human beings. Let's find a way. Hence, the software of Ubuntu, of respect for all humanity, is what we can lean on for us in this fast-paced change. Maybe something, Alex, some thoughts on the King Code quickly on that.
Yeah, I think, it's just a brilliant example of the many things that I think South Africa has contributed to the world and can continue to contribute. Yeah. And back to the question around what Mongezi asked, which is around, what can each country reflect on? I think we have an amazing opportunity you know, to probe the thinking around what is the future that we want to see, and to get every country that is participating in the G20 reflecting around what is the future we want to see for all our people in our different countries, and what is the type of value system that is necessary to help propel that future and to support it. And what does dignity, equality, as you say, look like? And this conversation, I think it's more pointed. And you know, in a way, as ironic as it sounds, I think it is actually good that the G20 is in South Africa, because, you know, the change that has happened in the world is, you know, what we used to believe as norms of doing business and trade. Or even norms of engagements and approaches to engagement between nation states have changed. Certainties, things that were certainties are no longer certainties. And yet the future, you know, and what it looks like is uncertain. And so I think at this juncture in history, it becomes important to go again, reflect around, you know, what these values look like. And I think we have an opportunity to infuse in humanity the concept around Ubuntu. What is Ubuntu? What is Ubuntu? Botho says, it starts with a philosophical position that acknowledges the importance of the individual. It does not negate it. I have individual interests, I have individual needs, and they're recognized. However, I cannot, in looking at my interest, ignore the interests of others. Ubuntu is challenging global approaches to leadership that are emerging, that are very individualistic. And it is saying to the world, these value systems, if you look at them throughout the history of humanity, they've always been corrosive. The outcome has been either the fall of certain systems, because they become exclusionary by nature. And so I think from a values-based perspective, South Africa has an opportunity to be able to say the value of Ubuntu has to be embraced as a global value where we see one another. We acknowledge the importance of seeing the ecosystem. Whilst its individual parts are important, yet they exist as a whole. And if elements in the ecosystem rebut the system, then the system is likely to enter into trouble and collapse. So I think it's a lovely opportunity for leaders to really reflect on the future I want to see and the underlying values that we need for the future.
I mean, that last piece is pretty much what happened with the SDGs, right? Because in many ways, it was like this slogan, and everybody just signed up for these things, and everybody just looked cute and pretty with the colorful stuff. But what was the human piece that talked about why is it important in different parts of that? I think there were parts of people who were actually having that, but this is an opportunity, as you say, to kind of revisit and embed and remind people that there are people behind all of these things that we are busy doing. This is fantastic.
Dr. Mo,
you wanted to say something to me? Go ahead.
Yes, I would love to throw this back, because Alex and I, yes, we're working with V20. You are part of that. You're partner in that. You have done a lot of work, Dr. Mo, behind the scenes. You've done you have global reach in your work. You have track record, your footprint globally, and awards globally around this, Dr. Mo, as an elder in the community, what you do. Before I get to that, the question for you on this is, what is your take around the positioning, bringing into the center values that are needed with your work in business, in entrepreneurship, in the arts, in music, in across sectors? What you do, you run an annual symposium doing incredible work. Ubuntu is a systems-based value system. If you hear what I'm saying, Ubuntu is a systems-based value system. It recognizes the interconnectedness of everything, from nature to technology to people to youth, age, gender, everything. We are part of an ecosystem, and we need to recognize that we are connected, interconnected, inextricably. So we need each other. We can't extract ourselves from each other. We need each other. I am because you are. I am because we are. You are because we are. We cannot separate ourselves from that, and we need each other to achieve anything. What is your take, Dr. Moore, about these kind of things that Alex and I are talking about?
You are not allowed to do that. Turning around. But I think the reason I'm having this conversation is obviously because it's actually quite exciting, obviously, for the work. However, I think what I like about everything that the both of you have spoken about speaks a lot to also you'll hear a lot of my questions there around accountability and consciousness, because that's really what I'm continuously trying to drive across the world, right? It's really helping leaders become more accountable, become more conscious. Become more accountable does not mean you're ticking the list on the goals you have achieved. It doesn't matter. It can be done. But if you're doing it with a knife behind somebody's back or causing wars in certain parts of the world, what's the point, really? What are we celebrating? You fail, right? But consciousness is actually the hard part, and I think that's where I was going back, Alex, to implementing this in corporate is already hard enough, because leadership requires you to make choices and decisions every single moment. And this Ubuntu thing of yours, people, is exactly the same, because it actually forces me to actually really think instead of working in line with my primitive desires and just shove people around and say, well, I am who I am, take me or leave it. It kind of like forces me to actually make decisions to show up as a human being, right? And which is kind of annoying. So that's my answer. I feel the depth and the width and the height, just the humongousness of this work. My research on values has been quite interesting for the last 7 years, which shows that actually only 80% of the people, it's 82% of the people, no, the other way around, 18% of the people share your values. So if you value dignity or you value social justice, only 18% value that. That means 82% of the people don't share your values automatically. That's a problem for leadership, because it actually means leaders have to be very deliberate to bridge the gap, because the one message is find your tribe, right? Because that's find your 18% and get on with it. But that's not how the world works. With 8 billion people across and the interconnectivity that we have there, you kind of have to work a bit harder to go across and find something like that. So you asked me for my answer. That's my answer, and I'm not taking follow-up questions.
That's brilliant.
Go ahead, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I love the insights, because if you think about values, it's actually a value system.
Yes.
Meaning that it is actually a combination of values, and at different points in time, there are trade-offs. There are always trade-offs, particularly in a corporate space. And I love what you're saying about the role of leaders to be able to bridge that gap and to create the system of values that at different times you leverage different aspects of it. But so it also requires leaders that have agile minds.
Yes.
And that have the ability not to take one view of things, but understanding that there's also a dynamism around value. So you kind of need that framework, but in it requires a level of dynamism.
Yes. You look like you wanted to say something else to me. You're on mute. You're muted.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we need to see the connections. The leaders that are conscious, you're mentioning about consciousness, Dr. Mongezi. Being conscious, I mean, there is intent and mindful stance in that. There is awareness that I need to recognize that I'm part of.
Yes.
The work that South Africa is doing as president and host of G20 this year is an incredible opportunity. Now that we have AI, artificial intelligence, and fast digital age, and then come back to this regularly, Ubuntu becomes more important because that's what we can be. We can't compete with machines. Because they are able to compute vast amounts of data at the same time instantly like that. Human beings need to reflect, need to think about things, need to consult, need to do other things like that. We have the opportunity now to build the human software, and Ubuntu offers us that, of finding ways to collaborate and partner in the world in a different way. If we can, like Alex was saying earlier, if you can bring Ubuntu into the center of doing leadership, doing business, doing government, we can impact the world in an incredibly powerful way going forward. Dr. Moore, thank you.
And I like that, and I wanna share this, that what you guys are asking is actually very hard, because it's not natural. Well, it is natural, but not easily accessible. The most accessible part, and Monde, if he was here, because I know he's leading that stream around equality and equity and all of that. The whole idea of equity first sits in our primitive space, where as animals we kind of want to separate ourselves and hang out with our members and people that are our friends, right? We see our femaleness, our whiteness, our ageness, and all of that stuff. It's just there, it's built in. But at the same time, we have this desire to connect, and there's all of these gifts that all of us have for each other. Hey, so you're asking us to now go beyond this primitiveness into this giftedness, right? And hey, good luck. So let's wrap up. I wish was so much time. I wish there was a lot more time to talk about this. So I wanna share quick. I wanna ask a quick question. You wanted to say something, James, before I go to my closing questions?
I wanted to say that's the beauty of being human, that we can transcend our genetic primal makeup and evolve to see and connect with each other, choosing that connection, because that makes us bigger and better collectively, stronger together.
Yes. So for everyone that's listening and going like, or watching and going like, okay, cool, I hear all of this, that's cool and exciting. What will we see next? What if they keep track of the two of you, and probably some of the other guys that I probably will be speaking to as this process goes? What should we look out for next?
Can I go first, Alex, so that you have the last word? Yeah. I love Alex's take on these things. Dr. Moore, for me, look out for any media, social media platforms. We are active on LinkedIn and other platforms. Engage, get involved, make this a part of our collective journey as a nation, as a people. Let's involve with ourselves in it. Support V20's operational and programmatic efforts, partnerships, collaborate with us to drive values-based leadership initiatives. Have conversations on values in your own space, wherever you are. Link people, refer people to this work, and there will be events, hosted dialogues. If you see any advert for that, share it and engage, participate, and be part of the journey, so that we make V20, South Africa's G20 hosting, a success for all of us together. Alex.
Thank you, Dumi. So just to tag on what Dumi said, also what you should see and expect to see from the V20 is showing and showcasing that it is possible. I think, in the conversation, you said that there's always this inclination in humanity for self-defense. At times, it's about me, myself, and I, and all of the people that look and like me and talk like me. Yes. But we want to spend time showcasing that values-based living is possible. Values-based leadership, it is possible. So we want to be able to give that view. And it's important not to have this as a naive view.
Yes.
Because values-based thinking and living doesn't mean that it's a challenge-free world. Actually, on the contrary, there are many things that come to challenge that approach to living. And so what we also want to do is be able to get people who've lived through challenges and really understand how they have worked through challenges using a value-based lens. Because many people say, you know what, values can sound like a very nebulous concept. That, you know, when I'm in the middle of a crisis, I really don't know what to do with it. You know, I must like act very fast. So we want to spend a lot of time just showcasing those good examples. But I think that, you know, what we would really like to see ultimately, and certainly from this call, is for all of us, first, you know, the concept around agency, owning my own space, just going and reflecting around the type of family we would like to see for the future, the type of society, the type of South Africa would like to see, and the type of Africa would like to see, and the type of world. And then reflect individually about what are the type of values I own my own space I need to see, and what are the type of values we should promote and demand accountability around, so that we drive a better future. So I think this is especially important ahead of the national dialogue that's been spoken about. You know, South Africa, we know the president has said we need to have this national dialogue. And I think we all need to, ahead of the national dialogue, really reflect around the type of values we used to have past and the type of the actual lived values today. Because while we talk about Ubuntu, many other values have crept in. You know, that really have eroded our society, and we need to reflect about what those are, name them for what they really are, and then decide that they're unacceptable, they're undesirable, and we should be active in really moving them out of our societies, or simply isolating them or demanding accountability around them, and then shape those values that we need, and then support that with concrete actions. You know, it's one thing to talk about values, but if they're not backed by concrete actions, then it remains a theoretical conversation. Then have that conversation. What are the concrete actions? What are the type of behaviors we want to see? And lastly, it has to be, what is the type of measurement? How are we going to measure it? Because people do what is measured. If you don't measure it, you're likely to move on to the next agenda item.
Yeah. I love that last piece, particularly around measurement, right? And I want to even add even consequences, because values also create boundaries, which is what makes this work quite hard. Because at some point you also need to decide love and no further, and in negotiation, but after a while, there's no negotiation. And it will be fascinating to see how this actually turns out. We have run so much out of time, but I know that people can follow Dr. Dumi as well as Alex here at Values 20 ORG. Everywhere on social media. So you can follow them on LinkedIn at values_org -20, values20 org everywhere else, or at values20.org on the internet to kind of get a sense of what else is happening. I think that is my call to action to you. Alex, Dr. Dumi, thank you so much for and encouraging and entertaining us, in entertaining my questions, particularly as far as this concern. I'm looking forward to a follow-up conversation at some point where we can hear what is happening there.
Thank you, Dr. Moss.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. And I'll remember, we must show up as human beings.
Yes, absolutely. And that was Dr. Dumisani Magadlela, who is a values advocate at the Values 20 for the stream lead for the solidarity stream. And then we were talking also to Alex Motshwanetsi Mathole, who is the stream lead for sustainable development. So much to talk about, but looking forward to seeing how we extend these conversations. And until then, have a lovely one.
the home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
Countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
views,
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
sports,
Mongezi, it's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
and music to inspire you every day. This is Vuga Online, your inspiration radio station.